how a lack of skill can be made up for with brute force. Now, this isn't something that I'm recommending. I'm just not. Like, my preference is elegance, leverage to get more done with less. But every now and then, I have to be okay with a brute force approach. I'm building software. First time, I am engaged with a team in the Ukraine. Loving the experience. Building software is cool. But I'm on this program called Figma. It's basically a high-def prototype kind of thing. You get to play around and click, and it works like software would work. But in the back end, every click is a new screen, a new copy. It's very powerful, very, very good for the development stage. And it's highly worthwhile to invest effort and time at this stage to identify problems. Because even though every click needs a new screen, this is far better than having these problems show up in development. When it's in development, every change requires large amounts of coding, and the analogy must be between the infinitely easier experience of changing something in a plan instead of changing in real life. I had this with my wife. My wife loves to do things freestyle, including where would a, 16 by 18 meter house land on a property. Now I had this exact experience. My wife's like, great, we're going to design the whole inside of the house. They're called Queenslanders. They're houses that are made up of wooden boxes. And the whole design was made of the house, but there was zero effort put into locating that house on the property. Our property was a blank sheet of land, so we could put it anywhere. And the greatest line of all time, as the house gets cemented in, 54 pillars going down into the ground, cemented in, my wife comes to me and says, I think it should have been 3 feet that way. I'm like, oh my God, just shoot me. Seriously? You really? I'm like, darling, I think it's where it is. Pretty sure if you wanted it 3 feet, we should have had that in the plans. Amazingly, she's still going on with this shenanigans. She's like, I'm going to save $5,000 in planning so that we just freestyle. I'm like, you know what? We're spending like $100,000 here on building a shed. I mean, you might think, wow, what kind of shed comes for $100,000? But I tell you, live on 2 acres, suddenly $100,000 is like, dude. I realized that when I was building a house, everything seemed to come in lots of 1,500, but in landscaping, it all comes in lots of 15,000. So that's only 6 lots. I'm like, oh wow, we put in a rock wall. How much is that? $30,000? Wow, you put in a shed. How much is that? That's $45,000. Oh, with a rock wall and a shed, we're already at 75,000. So it's pretty easy to get to 100. But coming back to the idea of brute force instead of lack of skill, when I'm in Figma right now, I don't know how to do some stuff. Like there's 50 screens and I want to move a graphic a couple of pixels to the left. And my only way to do this right now is literally copy and paste, delete, copy, 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 paste, delete 50 damn times. I'm like, oh, there has to be a better way to do this. Surely they designed it. Weirdly enough, my searches for the help didn't show anything. Like at least I was like, hang on, I recognize that this is a lack of skill. I'm going to try and resolve my lack of skill. And I actually asked the developers, I'm like, hey, how do you do this? And they're like, oh, we don't know. Or they didn't get the question. Language isn't the first option. Now, I could overcome that. I could go to Aussie developers, go to American developers, I go to UK developers, but there is a price to pay. And it comes back to the old 3. You can have 2 out of 3. Good, quick, and cheap. Now, I'm going good and cheap, so it's taking longer. But I'm learning. And I could, if I was more courageous, let's call it more courageous, just go and go, right, I want this to happen. But the problem is, I had a phone call about we're doing some development, due diligence. And they were like, you should be prepared for this first round of software to be a throwaway. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, you should expect to make no sales. This is just a something that you can go to investors and show. I'm like, I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in that. I want to have something that works. And if that means me upskilling and learning, then fine. So right now I'm stuck with brute force until I learn how to highlight every one of the 50 pages and make one change, and it happens in all of them. I know it's possible. I've seen it done. But right now, my lack of skill requires brute force. What's the solution? Do I want to keep doing it this way? No. I got to work out how to overcome the requirement for brute force by learning the skill. And this is applicable in many areas of my life, many areas of your life. So, question for you, where are you using brute force where you should be using elegance? And what's it going to take for you to get that skill so that you can use the move 50 at once instead of having to do 50 iterations of the same thing? All right, that's all I got for you tonight. I'm off to play a little kirtan, a little harmonium. This is my particular spiritual devotion. I love it. It's New Year's Eve, and many of you will probably think that's the last thing that you would want to do, but for me, I'm like, hell yes! Let's go jam it up, sing it up, chant it up, and bring in this new year in a spectacular way, in service to spirit, in service to God. I love this part of my life. Not many do. And if you don't like it, that's cool. Guess what? We're talking systems 95% of the time. But just in case you're interested and you want to know what the heck is Tom talking about, you can go check out a little bit of Krishna Das. That is my favorite. That's how I got into it. Krishna Das, he has a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube. And this is essentially chanting meditation. Every now and then, there's little special effects, little rewards. It doesn't give its rewards immediately. This isn't some kind of drug. This is a devotional practice. But man, when it does, whoo, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I hope you get to experience that at some point. And irrespective of whether you do or do not, I hope that you have a little bit more insight into systems, how to do things more powerfully, how to get more done with less effort in elegant, powerful ways. I hope you have a great night tonight. End of 2021. Let's make 2022 a spectacular and powerful year. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the podcast, of the Facebook Live, of the YouTube. Whichever you're on, go subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in tomorrow's episode as we continue this journey into Power System to create results. See you then.